Hello, welcome to my Zerg vs Zerg tutorial, and we're going to be talking about that matchup, Zerg vs Zerg. It is a mirror matchup, so obviously it is a perfectly balanced matchup. There's no one race favoring the other, and obviously, assuming the map is symmetrical, the map can't favor either race. So as you can see there, I just sent all 4 workers to different patches, and my Overlord out to scout. You want to scout with your Overlord. Scouting is really crucial in this map. I'll talk about why in this matchup, and I'll talk about why just a little bit later. And the reason why I sent the workers to different patches is if you send them to the same patch, they mine it one at a time, so you don't get your minerals as fast, so it just gets your economy off to a little bit of a better start. So that first Overlord is going to go out to scout. And the build I'm going to be showing you guys today and talking about is the 12 hatch build. And it's the most economic Zerg build. It will give you 2 hatcheries, it'll give you the most gas, and so it'll basically end up, over time, it'll end up giving you both a potential Zergling and a potential mutalisk advantage. If someone goes with a less economic build, like a 9 pool, they'll come out with faster initial lings and most likely faster initial mutas, but as it continues, especially if you're able to hold that off, you'll be at a much bigger advantage because you're going to have 2 gases and 2 hatcheries to produce out of, whereas a 9 hatching player will likely only have 1 hatchery and 1 gas, and they'll also have a few less drones. Like this build will get you 13 drones, whereas I think 9 pool gets you only 9 or 10 drones. And what you see me doing there is, it's just a trick to get 1 more drone out while I wait for the Overlord. You go build an extractor, and then it makes your supply go down because your drone turns into a building, and then you can build another drone at your hatchery. So that's what I do. And so in this build, it is a 12 hatch. So what I talk about when I'm saying it's a 12 hatch or whatever, it means that if you look at on the top right of the screen there where it says 12 out of 17, that's your food count. Build orders are usually talked about in terms of food count, meaning you build this building when you have, this much food, and the next building when you have that much food. So 12 hatch means you're going to make the hatchery when you have 12 food, 12 supply, however you want to call it. So that drone's going out right now to build that hatchery. And as you can see, I'm a little bit late with that. You really want to have it down when you have 300 minerals. The closer you can get to that, the better. I think part of the problem is I didn't quite know where the expansion was. I thought it was a little closer, so I sent them out a little late. And then normally what you do is you go ahead and build a spawning pool and then an extractor with your next 2 drones while not making any more. I actually am playing a computer, so I know what the computer's doing, so I have to do it right. I can get a little bit faster gas for faster mutalisks. But when you don't know what your opponent's doing, you definitely want to get the spawning pool first and then the extractor. So you build the hatchery on 12, you build the spawning pool on 11, and then you build the extractor on 10. And the reason why food goes down is, like I said, your drones actually turn into buildings, so you lose the drones and your food drops a little bit. So while you're building those 3 buildings, don't be building any more drones. And then once you go back down to 10, build drones again until 13. And then as soon as your extractor finishes, you're going to want to send your drones out to start collecting gas from that as soon as it finishes. And then with your first 100 gas, you want to turn your hatchery into a lair. And just to do that, just click on the hatchery and hit L. You want to use hotkeys as much as possible. It just speeds up the process. And then once you get to 13 drones, the reason why you're going to stop is so that when your hatchery, or when your spawning pool finishes rather, you can make 3 larvae into Zerglings for a total of 6 Zerglings right off the bat, and get ready to have a little defense. Because it's pretty common in Zerg vs Zerg, especially if the person's doing a little bit more aggressive build. If they're doing something like a 9 pool or an over pool, they'll usually send their first 6 Zerglings down towards your base. So you want to get those Zerglings hatching right away to be able to fend off any early aggression from them. And then, at this point, once you have your 13 drones and are waiting on your lair, you pretty much just want to, as soon as your Overlord gets over to the base, see what they're doing and then get ready to react to it. Like, if you see them making a bunch of Zerglings, then you need to start making Zerglings yourself. If you don't, they'll come and attack you and you'll get run over. And at the same time, if you see them building a bunch of drones, I guess you have 2 options. You could decide to go for a bunch of Zerglings and just try to run them over with Zerglings, or your other option is just to keep building drones. I'd say if you're comfortable with macro, keeping up building drones is probably the safer way to go, but either way is viable. So it's a pretty reactionary matchup. You really want to see what they're doing, and just kind of, the rule of thumb is you're doing the same thing your opponent's doing so that you don't end up getting overrun. Or if he builds a bunch of drones and you just kind of don't really do anything, or build lings and don't use them, then he'll have a big economic advantage when you start getting into mutalisk and scourge battles. And in this matchup, that's really all that you ever see used is Zerglings and mutalisks and scourge. And the reason for that is, well, Zerglings are your initial game unit, and you never see hive tech like defilers or guardians or ultralisks, because the matchups just never last that long. It's very rare for a Zerg vs Zerg to get beyond a mutalist stage, and usually it just gets ever bigger mutalist battles. And then you don't see hydralisks or any of the other like tier 2 units, lurkers, anything like that. You don't see them because of mobility, and you'll see that in this game play out. Basically, hydralisks just don't have the mobility to keep up with mutalisks, and they're really inefficient at defending the harass. And then the other option you could think about possibly consider someone doing is getting spore colonies and hydralisks, using spore colonies to defend the mutalisks. The problem is that will hurt your economy too much because you're forced to turn the already few drones you have into buildings, further reducing your economy. So if you have 10 drones and you turn one of them into a building, you just lost 1/10 of your economy, which is pretty significant. So you don't see that very often. And as you can see, I've got my second gas up with the natural, and I'll start mining it here in a little bit. Right now, my bigger concern is getting minerals, so I'm not actually mining it yet. And as you can see, as soon as I finished the lair, the first thing I did was put down a spire. You want to put that down as quickly as possible upon finishing the lair, because you want those mutalisks out super fast. Because if your opponent gets his out before you, and yours don't hatch while he's flying towards you, he's going to get to your base, and you're not going to have any anti-air, and it's going to be free to kill a bunch of your drones. So you get that down as fast as you want. And also notice I pre-built some overlords so I had enough supply to support mutalisks. You don't want to be supply stuck or near supply stuck when your mutalisks come out. So what you'll see is when that spire gets to 300 HP, you want to start saving larvae. And that way when it finishes, you can hatch up like 6 mutalisks or 4 mutalisks right away. So at 300 HP, stop making stuff. So you might want to make your overlords right once you start the spire, or when it's like a quarter of the way complete. But when it gets to halfway, which is 300 health, then stop building anything out of any of your hatcheries so that you can pop up as many mutalisks as possible right when the spire finishes. And then, depending on the matchup, you usually want to get maybe a pair or two of Scourge, because Scourge are really effective against mutalisks, especially if you just clone them. Like if you clone a mutalisk into a Scourge, or clone a Scourge into an opponent's mutalisks, it'll take away most of their health, and they're pretty softened up and easy to kill. And they're tricky to dodge too. There's a way to dodge them with Patrol Micro, but it's kind of tricky to do, so they just really force your opponent to have to do a lot of micro to try to defend against him, and it just makes his life a pain. So mixing in a few Scourge is usually a good idea, better than going, say, just pure Mutalisk. And right now, I saw that they have a decent number of Hydras right now, and with my Mutalisk at the number I have, they're not really that effective yet, because Mutalisks deal splash damage, so the more you have, the better. And also, because of the way you micro these guys, which you'll see in a sec, they're more effective when they can just one-shot the Hydras rather than take multiple hits to kill them. So at this point I'm just kind of flying around, making sure they don't do a whole lot, and just waiting for more Mutalisks, and wait till I get up to about 10 or 11 Mutalisks, and then start trying to do some damage. But, I'm just going to fly around and be generally harassy, see if there's any openings I can get in to kill some